I am here with Dr. Mark Bull on the Truth About Golf podcasting. Mark, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Eric. And it's a real pleasure being asked. And thank you very much. And very much looking forward to discussing whatever today. So yeah, looking forward to our discussion.
Well, I can't tell you how excited I am, to talk to you, because I feel like every time I listen to you, I'm absolutely mesmerized, and just your depth of knowledge we'll get into it. It's amazing, and so much to learn from. So, since a lot of people listen to this from all over, and we're in America, you're across the pond. So tell people a little bit about who you are and kind of briefly how you got to where you are today.
My background loosely, I was a real enthusiast as a player. I love playing golf. So I actually played golf on Thursday last week, and I'm still going through every shot in my head still from Thursday. So I really am an absolute lover of golf. That's my kind of my real connection to golf still. So I was a real aspirational kind of enthusiastic player. Probably knew I was never going to be that good, but I always kind of aspired to be as good as I could be. So I had no aspirations to play on tour. I was not even close to being that good. But I always thought, I can't get good at this kind of game. And but I always had another great love as a child around things like anatomy, physiology. I was a real pain in the bum as a child. I have a very dominant, very intellectual older brother. My brother got the brains of the family. I kind of got really what was left over in a nice way. So my brother kind of took all the intellect and kind of left me the bits behind. And so I was always very much, my brother's this really intellectual, kind of dominant human. How do I get noticed if I think about it now? Yeah. So I was always kind of curious around questions and exploration and anatomy, physiology, and how do I get kind of heard in some ways through my brother's kind of successes that he's had in life. So I kind of had these early loves: love of golf, love of anatomy, love of learning, love of being curious. And so 35 years on now, you and I here today. I remember I spoke at my very first conference in the US a long time ago now. I kind of go, I'm staggered when you know my story in life. I come from the most, you could not get a more standard background in life. 99% in England don't know where my hometown is, which is not bad in some ways. They kind of go, where? And I kind of like that response. I live in a very, very small part of a place called Somerset, the rest of England. And I had the most standard background. My dad worked in a factory, my mum was a cleaner, but yet for some reason my brother and the leftovers of me, I don't know where our personalities came from really, as far as my brother's background, and what I've been very fortunate to do so far in life. So there's clearly a story there somewhere. And, so I was very lucky, I think, as a child, that just kind of chose my parents well. It's my kind of thing. I kind of went you and you. And they kind of so where we're at today is really that. My love still for exploring, learning, always questioning, kind of I wonder why, and I can go in some pretty diverse places in discussion some days, because you kind of think the answer's out there somewhere. That's what kind of really inspires me. Somewhere is the answer, but where is it? So I've always been really motivated that way. So yeah, and so as I've been doing this now. This is my 25th year, I think, now, being around this stuff now. And I'm still like a 2-year-old, 25 years on, 5 years on. So yeah, it's a real privilege.
Still curious. Is that curious? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can hear it in the way you talk. So biomechanist, for those who don't know, what the heck's a biomechanist?
So essentially, it's the study of human movement, very much applying like the laws of mechanics and physics to human movement. So even as I've evolved, I should say, I've kind of moved away from that name. Biomechanics is a part of human movement. And I think hopefully that as I've expanded more in life, I just call it now movement. I'm just curious about movement. Biomechanics is a vital part of movement. It's a section, it's a subsection within a large section, but as you start to again explore why, so I kind of say to most people that most movement issues are not movement issues. Everything will display as a movement problem, but rarely is it a movement problem. So it may display very evidently, say for example, the kinetics, the kinematics, there's two very well-known and very established sides of biomechanics, the kinetic forces and then the kinematic movements. But what they never tell you is why the person produces the kinetic and kinematic profiles that they do. So when you have, say, for example, it may be 3D data, or maybe, say, force plate data or club kinetics, what it never tells you, okay, why is that person really produced the value that way? And what I've learned through 25 years of messing up, really, and you kind of, as I reflect on that, is that almost every movement problem actually isn't really a movement problem. There's something somewhere through that lovely chaos of life that makes the player respond that way to then produce the values you see on the screen. So what really, you and I were talking off camera about 2010. I don't know, it was about 2010 actually. I started to look at myself thinking, you know what? I think I'm the problem. I think it's actually me now is the issue, because you kind of, in a very humble way, kind of go, well, maybe the cure has now become the disease. Maybe I am the problem, that I'm getting these guys to, change the values and improve the data and produce different profiles. But what I'm not really looking at is why they do this. So I had a real kind of, wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning in a cold sweat one day thinking, wow, I'm missing this. What I'm not looking at is I wonder why. What's the deep reason why someone produces what they do? An example being a very good European tour player, DP World Tour player. I've known since he was a young boy, so I've probably known him now in excess of 10 years. Had a really, he had a bad foot issue this year, had a very poor foot pain, and he couldn't walk. He was literally at that point in life now. And actually went back to a tooth issue. So when we actually resolved his tooth issue, his foot pain went away. And that's the kind of stuff I get really excited about, that these real, you kind of sit in dark rooms and think, wow, okay, so blimey, it's kind of this stuff. And the amount of kind of other stories I could share like that. So typically what you look at is it may display as a movement problem, but it's not really a movement issue. It's something somewhere migrates into the movement. It's like saying, if someone's aspiration is to lose weight, well, we need to kind of look at why they first gained weight. It's a bigger story there. Why did that person initially feel like they had to gain weight? Because that will go back to some kind of deeper belief systems from way back when. So just saying lose weight isn't really resolving the issue. So that's been a big motivator of mine in the last, probably goes back to about 2010 actually. It's the last 13 years now. It's to really expand my, again, in a very humble way, education, looking at all these areas. I'm just in the process of finishing it's not really a paper as far as academia, around even the lights we train under, when you're under certain lighting, and that really influences force production. So when you're under, say, artificial blue light, these really overstimulating lights, which you often get in indoor studios or certain gyms, and that can really disrupt the nervous system. So people swing often slower, become more disruptive in their movements, become more variable in a very erroneous way, lift lighter, for example, when under certain light conditions. When you kind of reconnect with nature again and put us back into the sunlight is in line with our circadian rhythm in life. So that the light you're exposed to is aligned with our sleep-wake cycles, how much their speeds increase, their movement becomes less disrupted, they lift heavier, for example. So I'm hoping to release that at some point soon. So that's the cool stuff. For me, it's like be aware of the good stuff in life. What's the good stuff? And
that's so interesting. I mean, that's amazing. That's interesting. So you have a website. What's your website? So people can get there.
It took a lot of thought, Eric. It's called ball3dacademy.com. Took me a lot of
awesome.
Yes.
I mean,
it's not particularly creative, but yes, ball3dacademy.com.
So it's awesome. And one of my favorite things you have on there, well, there's a lot. The videos are great, but I don't know what you call them, volume 1, volume 2. Your sayings that you wrote, just like a sentence long. What was the genesis of that? I read those all the time, and I feel like I get to know you better by reading it. But some of them I just read, I'm like, gosh, it's just, I love it. you know?
So I say, loosely speaking, they're called coaching manuals. There's no manual in any way. It's like, how do you give a name to really a collection of life experiences, or just events, or just people that are way more intellectual than me that you're just kind of observed and learn from. So really what those, we'll call it manuals to keep it loose today for the episode listen to this. They're just a collection of the last 25 years to date of my observations and just things you pick up and acquire and kind of learn along the way. So they're just like one-line stories. That I've just kind of, again, some I've you listened to. I've kind of just they've been very organic. Sometimes I thought, okay, you and I are having this discussion now. Something could often come up in this discussion. I don't like that. That's quite neat. So it's just the first 25 years, I hope, of my experiences today. I've always been a big observer. I don't know why. I never chose to be that way as a child. I've always loved kind of observing and and it's just just reflections and observations in again the people I've been so blessed to be around in life, that kind of stuff. So that's all they are. I just write them down, and I'm a big note taker. I like to write notes all the time, and stuff like that.
Well, I feel like it's just not golf in there. It's life that you're talking about. I mean, there's golf stuff intertwined in there, but a lot of it's just life. When you talk about how to live life, how to be better in life, and so I think it's just an awesome read. So anybody, I mean, I absolutely love that. One of the things in there that you talk about are, I could be wrong if it's not in there. I'm not sure, but you mentioned the 4 fundamentals of golf, according to you. And I don't know if you remember that. So, I mean, I don't know if I put you in a spot, but so let's just talk about this. If there's the fundamentals of golf were when I grew up, and I guess you grew up, or grip, stance, posture, alignment, right? How do you view those? How do you view that today as compared to what we were brought up as fundamentals? Those are the fundamentals of golf.
I don't recall that in there, but I'm sure it is in there.
Well, you don't say that. You don't say those are the fundamentals. You talk about body movement. You talk about how we wrote our rotational movement. You talk about impact. Basically those, and ball movement. So basically 4 simple things that are above kind of that. So, and I could be wrong. I could have read something else of yours where that came from. I'm not sure.
So it might be along the lines of the most important move we make is transition. The most important event is impact, but our biggest influence is our concept. So that's a big one. So when you look at, say, all the movements that happen in the golf swing, transition is the most important movement for many reasons. It reveals how we got there, and it reveals where we perceive we need to go next. Impact's the most important event because that's obviously impact, but our biggest influence is our concept. What is it exactly we're trying to do? And I think when you look at, say, the fundamentals, that's very much from a coaching approach. So we look at, say, the golf swing, which is 8% of performance. But again, it really goes back to the golf swing, which is gets so much attention, and you know what, good, because it's such a wonderful area of interest, but it's a very, very small part of performance.
So you said 8%. Say that again. The golf swing is what percent of, or how?
Just 8%. It's a percentage. It's I can't give it a number. It's just a part of golf. I get this a lot with players, and I remember having a discussion with a guy fairly recently as well, many majors in recent years. It was kind of complaining about how he moves and the way you hold the club. I said it's the same movement, it's the same way you held the club that made you win 3 major championships. It can't be the way you hold it, can it? But again, there was a life event happening, which was then migrates into how he moves. So again, like you said about life and golf are inherently connected. You can't divide the two because how someone performs in golf represents life, and also vice versa. So I think you look at it that way, that of all the movements we make in the golf swing, how we move in transition is the most important move. It tells someone how they got there. It also reveals their perception of where to go next. Impact is the event, of course it is, but our intention, what is it exactly Erik is trying to do, is the main influence. So that's more around the actual performance of golf. You look at, say, the golf swing itself, most of that is still pretty true, you would say. I think what's really evolved, Eric, in recent years is the language we've used. The word stance these days. So I just do to say it's kind of, I look at it within the idea of movement as kind of how we stand, how we walk, and how we breathe is the basis of movement.
Okay.
So a lot of what I do, hopefully one day you'll come to Reigate, where Hugh and I are based. So you'll come to see Hugh and I in London, where we have a student. I'm very privileged that my student has about a 30, 40-yard walk from the car park. I watch people walk towards me. And in a very humble way, I kind of learn a lot about how they move just by watching them walk. And I like to observe how people stand, even in a fun way, how you sit as you and I speak today. You just look at how people sit and walk and then how they breathe. Most likely explains why they do what they do in their golf swings. You've got that almost that advanced feedback. And when you start having the 3D data, you think, well, I saw you walk that way towards me. So therefore, most likely, the values you're producing is representative of how you adapt for the gait cycles you have.
Okay.
So if you could look at it in so many ways. So the idea of stance is just kind of standing. How you put your hands on the golf club are vital. I mean, we can go into some tremendously deep areas around this stuff. That pretty much every movement in life is controlled by the hands. Where the hands move controls how the human responds. For those guys watching on YouTube now, if you just kind of reach above your head, your spine will extend. If you touch the floor, your spine will flex. If I take my left hand and reach to the right, I will rotate. What's happening there? So my spine is always following the hand. That's the kind of basis of movement. If you go even further back than that, that every single finger in our hand, there's a muscular connection into the eye. So all of our fingers, when you actually trace the muscle connections, actually trace into the ocular muscles of the eye. Hence the idea of kind of hand-eye coordination. The hand follows the eye. Where the eyes look, the hands and fingers follow. So when you look at it, how you hold the club is vital in so many ways. We just know a little bit more about why now because of the eye-finger connection. The hand-eye, the hand-eye coordination. That stuff is still 90 whatever percent so true. The challenge is it's just not very cool anymore. Guys start talking about really advanced kinetic, and I get that. Because that's just not, talking about how someone stands like dull, but it's the good stuff. It's the good stuff.
Okay. Well, so you talked a little bit about concept before in your mind, I guess, of what the swing is or what even impact looks like, right? I ask all the time in lessons, show me impact. And I just find it just amazing, even with some good players that they don't know how to show it to you that well. But so the concept isn't there. So, but if the concept isn't there, like where does intent and concept come together, or do they not? Like, I guess intent of movement and what if you have it, I guess, and intertwining that with the concept we have, how do you do that, I guess?
Concept in some ways, this is my fault, so apologies to you and your viewers. Concept's a wrong word. It's more something called schema. Yeah. So someone's schema is the history behind the concept. What led you to believe that's true? Is so something called someone's schema, SCHEMA, I think it is. So you look at what creates someone's schema. Excuse me, sorry. What creates someone's schemas? Typically, they're called perception. They're called perception action cycles. So our past perceptions in life influence our current actions, and our actions influence our perceived perceptions. So really the biggest influence still, and we can talk a little bit around why it's so different on juniors in a second, on why we do what we do is our memories in life. Okay. So look at again, this is kind of goes back to, again, why most movement issues are not movement problems. Everything displays as a movement issue. But if someone has a memory of a certain task, or you have a memory of an experience, those past memories will now influence our current perceptions. It's like if you said to say, I have a 4-year-old daughter, so she's hopefully past the phase now. If you said to a 2-year-old, don't touch that plate, it's hot, what will they do? Touch it, because you have no memory of anything. Memories start to form, how I understand how the synapses in the brain works, the memories in the brain that go into the hippocampus, the part of the brain where kind of deep memory is stored. It's about the age of 4 you really start to connect. So all a memory is a series of electrical behaviors in the brain. All these electrical synapses, they're called junctions in the brain. You start to form them, I think, as far as what we see as kind of deep memory about the age of 4. So if you said to a 2-year-old, if you do that, what do you think might happen? I don't know, I'm 2. So when you start to think about our memories over life, how we choose to remember something, which is based on how we chose to see it, and then how we chose to respond to it, forms the memory. So someone says in memory of, we've all got a golf course. You think, oh, that hole is, it just absolutely gets me.
Yeah.
So every time, so our memory immediately is influencing our perception. So our actions, our movements are now being influenced by those past memories. It's a bit like saying, you and I are both, Titus are a wonderful partner of mine. So, I love Titus with a passion, but everyone's got that club in their bag that they don't like. Not because Titus had made me the wrong club in any way. These guys are the best. It just happened to be when I think back to I played on Thursday on the whatever hole it was, like a really bad tee shot with a 6-iron, and now my 6-iron's like, oh, 6-iron again, because it's the memory.
Right.
So we get the guys going, I can't hit my 3-wood. Oh, must be something wrong with it. Well, no, we've actually looked at you first, but a lot of people don't look at themselves because you mean I'm the problem? I'm invariably yes. That 6-iron, yes, it's the wrong way. No, that's memory from an experience of the club. So that they're called attractors in the brain. So what they're often referred to as attractor regions or attractor wells. So that they are these connections in the brain that link the environment, the task, and the memory. You might get it, say, for the American audience, say in the NFL, there might be a player on the team that when they're kind of 5 points down with a minute to go, always behaves badly. It's very common in rugby in England. So rugby is a kind of a socially violent game in England that we play. And there's always that one player, it doesn't matter what therapy he has or whatever behavior work he goes through, when they're losing, he'll be the guy that stamps on someone a minute to go because of those connections in the brain between the task, the environment, and the human. So when you look at why we do what we do, it often goes back to memory. In those perception action couples, our actions, how you're behaving now, is influencing your perception, but your past perceptions are influencing now how you should behave. And often the response to that is you produce a 3D value, or you produce a certain ground force profile, or you produce, in your case, TrackMan, you produce a TrackMan value. Really what that is the numerical representation of life.
Okay.
So I've done it many times in the past. I've looked to influence, say, I work alongside swing catalysts. So swing catalysts are a partner of mine. I would look to influence, say, the ground forces. It doesn't ever really shift someone's beliefs or intent. Well, I'm not sure about this, and so it really irritates their belief systems. But when you start shifting their intention and concepts of movement, it almost always improves their ground force data. So it's not always bilateral. So I've been around many players, and I'm sure you have as well, where you've shared feedback and they've gone, well, I just don't see it that way. Okay, but when you start to explore why they see it, the schema again that way, they almost always produce different profiles. So that's, I kind of say to many guys, it's called ground reaction force to a reason. The clue's in its name. What's it reacting to? Now, it's not the very rigid biomechanical references, how the feet leverage the floor and how the feet entrap the floor. That's the real biomechanical observation. But why do the feet leverage the floor that way? What's making the foot? I have a historically bad right ankle. It goes back to I say loose days as a gymnast. I say that in a complete kind of overestimation of my gymnastic skills. So my foot lives in a certain position. So it doesn't matter what I do, you need to get more torque that way. But you know why my foot does what it does? Well, no, then if you did, why would you say you've got to produce more torque? My foot's being pulled that way, and you want me to go that way. Good luck with that one. So the torques I'm producing through the floor respond to my days as a gymnast.
Yeah. So history, understanding the person in front of you.
And even the word history, it's his story. the clues in the name. It's called history for a reason. It's his story. So when you understand the person's story, then you'll understand the history.
So you have Bull 3D. So 3D. So I want to talk to you first just about your like you started with talk a little bit about your 3D that you use and kind of how it, I don't know. So how you started with it and how you use it. And then I want to talk a little bit about what everybody here can get into by what you offer on your website. But first about the 3D you started with years ago.
Yeah, so again, it was in 2010. I remember sitting in my apartment, as it was at the time, in London, essentially, and I was bored one night. At the time, I was using a commercial system, thinking, this stuff's really not that good. I need to be cool if I could build this myself. And I'm very dangerous with an idea. So me and ideas and me are not good friends. So this is to build this. And so long short definition, I was then very fortunate to develop my own 3D system. And that was in 2010. And in the last, as you know, the last 3 months, so as you and I record this back in January this year, I then released it onto iPhone and iPad app. The reason why it's yet to go onto Android is Android does not have in the camera system motion capture yet. Apple does. It's the reason why, otherwise it'd be across every device. But we are looking to mitigate that by developing our own camera very soon. So I've been very fortunate since January 20 this year to now have this available for any use, really. So whether it be coach use, occasional player use, because it has the ability to self-capture now. So my 3D system's evolved from being still, so still using players, is very hugely expansive, very complex, but not in a complex to use, just really exploratory way of looking at movement. I also have then a very intuitive, playable one. If someone wants to know, like you and I are speaking about off camera before we came live today, apologies there, look at the basis of movement is the idea of become more, become less. That's movement. Hey, Eric, do less of this, do more of that. That is movement. Ridiculously to say weight loss, because there's so many more mechanisms behind it. Want to lose weight, do more, eat less. That's the basis of life, really. Or vice versa, you want to gain weight, well, do less and eat more would be the concept behind that.
Right.
And it's the same with movement as well. So that what the new app does, it really you cannot type quick enough because it works super fast. It will tell the user immediately in live 3D data, Eric, do less of this, do more of that. So it's a very playful way now, a very intuitive way of giving, doesn't matter who you are, someone that plays once a year or a major champion, within immediate feedback, hey, player X, do more of this, do less of that, in a really kind of playful way. So that's the story today. I have my big system, which obviously involves connecting sensors to the body, which you'll know, and very kind of historical way of capturing, motion capturing, whether it be through sensors attached to the body or in the kind of the optical systems you often see in laboratories, but it's now gone to iPhone, which I'm really excited about. It's cool, very, very cool.
It's really neat. How is that going to change? I mean, I don't know how is that going to change. I feel like things are changing so much, in golf, especially with the ability to have that now for coaches instead of having to have one, indoor in their bay. And I mean, the cost of it, it's, $35,000 or something versus, whatever yours is, like 400 or 500, right?
Yeah.
So I guess how is this going to change coaching? Or are we going to see more of this and less of TrackMan eventually? Like people getting less into all these data and numbers more and start actually looking more at movement? Is that where coaches may actually start going to?
I think you look at it. It's called TrackMan, but what part of the man does it track? Would be my response. It doesn't track any part of the man. So I say that in a humorous way, that how it got that name is a fun story, because what part of the man is it tracking?
Yeah, good point.
So that's my kind of humorous.
I like that.
It's not tracking any part of the man, but it's called TrackMan. And I think initially it's going to make coaching a lot worse. Is my prediction. Coaching will get a lot worse now for a bit of a while, because you'll get this is globally now. not just necessarily my app, but my app's part of the problem if I think about it. Because you'll now get a lot of the guys that will start making calls around information they don't really understand.
Yeah.
So that's why I hope, again, I don't want to make this about, you know, myself or my systems. I really mean that. You know, I get a little bit kind of embarrassed about things. Hopefully what it will do is then feed into my academy, which then provides the know-how behind the information. So when you have information or knowledge, you look at it kind of, it's very divisive, you know, it's the idea of, you know, knowledge and know-how. A lot of guys have tremendous knowledge these days, but very little know-how. Okay, and that, based on what you now know, how are you going to use this? So you'll get people now, like I was 15, 20 years ago, that are now making all these calls around, well, you need to do this and you need to do that. Okay, but what no one's told you is why. Why do they move that way? Why is there a need to do what you see? So hopefully what the academy does, and I can really say this in the most kind of hopeful, humble way, is provide the know-how, the context. When you start seeing these values, these could be some of the reasons why someone produces these values that you see. So to get good at that, we've actually got to get good at this. What you see over here is just in response to stuff happening over here. So I kind of say that most people never ever change what you see or feel. The minute you become aware of something, or you observe that the error's already happened, what we become aware of is almost the frame after the response.
We got to look before.
You might see a pelvis move that way, but that's just responding to the eyes look. So just improving the pelvis hasn't really resolved why. So hopefully, when I say I, in the most, again, you know, non-arrogant way, I hope, when I initially designed the app, it was okay. These two need to kind of connect, otherwise it will make coaching worse. Because you'll get guys, like I say, I don't really use social media, but I do sit some nights and smile when you see somebody, even players, you know, I'm very fortunate to work with. You see these coaches online that start talking about players they've never met, have no experience of, have no connection with, but they reference how they move in their golf swing based on a video. I'm thinking, I say this in front, you must be on
crazy.
You are on glue. You are absolutely on glue if you think that's what a player does. What they never tell you is why. So I've been exposed to it many years when you start looking at players that I'm very blessed to work with, and long may continue. They start making these online reviews of what these people do. I'm thinking it doesn't do anything near anything like that. So that's what you'll get a lot of, I think, coaches using this information without the know-how. And so that even goes back to, you know, what you were saying there, Eric, that the lasting goals needs more information. We don't understand well enough the information we currently have. So we need to press pause on all information until we really understand, okay, let's look at what we currently have. Let's understand that to a real deep level. When we do, then we can look at what next. So we don't need more information. We need more know-how, more context, more, it's called exponential learning, you know, learn through experience. We need more of that now. And hopefully what the academy does is provide that.
Well, I mean, it definitely does without learning. I always thought coaching, and I have learned this over the last, I don't know, 5-6 years or whatever, but coaching is just, I think, crazy how it's done or taught. Because I feel like it should start with your stuff and then go into maybe TrackMan stuff of swing. But I feel like it's done backwards. Well, it's never, first off, they never teach your stuff, anatomy or anything like that, unless you go find it on your own. You know, you just look at the swing and, you know, maybe they'll teach you some, you know, do this if they do that, do this if they do that. Here's the drill for this, here's the drill for that, which is just awful. And then, you know, I feel like it should be redone and be started off with understanding movement. I'm probably speaking to the choir here, and then get into that stuff. But I don't know if things would ever change that way. But it's maybe it'd be too much. But you know, it's, you have to, as a coach, and you have to go out and find it, and that's how I pursued you to talk to and to learn from, and your website, because it's so, the knowledge is just amazing, and just continually to learn every day from it.
We're very kind. I
think
think
you provide the resources for it. It's amazing.
You're very kind. I think you've kind of two things you said there very, very well. That a lot of guys teach, but they can't coach. They're very different. You go to, say, the Oxford Dictionary of English language. You look at what teaching is and what coaching is. They're very different, those two. Coaching is about the whole human. teaching is, almost telling someone loosely what to do. That's not really learning. That's very, very different. I can't recall, if I actually think about it now, it's a little late for me, so my brain's a bit kind of dormant tonight, but I can't recall the last time I gave someone a drill in a session. So I think if you really, this is where I think a lot of coaches maybe get slightly kind of misaligned. You cannot provide a solution unless you fully understand the problem you're trying to solve. Most experience, a lot of coaches will go solution, solution, solution. Let's kind of hope that one works.
Yeah.
So if you really understand the problem, spend more time on day one or second one, and you fully understand, okay, I now know why they do what they do, the answer typically just organically appears. So I need to do that. And that's then when you don't need a drill, because if someone is so clear around what to do, why it has to be done, and how they need to do it, the idea of why and how, I wonder why I do this, therefore how do I need to now resolve this, you don't need a drill. So most guys who use drills have gone, it's all, do you know what, Eric, it's actually too challenging, it's too demanding, it's actually hard work to think about it. Yeah. But it's easy to do a drill because it's like, losing weight is hard work, taking a tablet is quite easy. It's a bit like that approach. So you look at it within, say, physiology, and it's so applicable to golf coaching. Physiology is very much about behaviors, nutrition, exercise, supplementation, medication, and surgery. We've inverted that in recent years. Okay, what pill can I take? What can you do for me? Then followed by, well, I might take a few supplements. Okay, I better start to look at my nutrition, exercise now. You mean I need to look at what I do? Wow, okay. That's, you look at physiology, it's the other way around. So I think if you really understand why, and you kind of really, you now know why you do what you do, the answer just appears. So using a drill means you don't really actually know what they need to do or why they need to do it.
That's a good point. I think we need to look at ourselves clear. I have this guy I work with who told me last week he has a gut feeling. Basically, he was leaving me, but he forgot to think of all the things he has not completed in the last 6 months of anything that we've worked on. All the hard work, was never done. So he's got a feeling, and so it just doesn't want to go through those things and look at himself. But hopefully he'll learn down the road.
You look at what
look inside himself.
Look at what gut feeling is. It's something called the brain-gut axis, which is connected by something called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is what connects the brain and the gut. So often, a lot of our physiology displays in our gut. So when we get these kind of feels in our gut, that's our physiology saying we need to get more over here. So physiology is really clever. It always wants to take us back to a sense of balance. If you think about it, if you get very hot, you sweat. You get cold, you shiver. You get hungry, ghrelin spikes, the ghrelin signal, I need food, you get thirsty, dehydration. So when you get these gut feelings, that's our physiology saying we need to go over here, which is the idea of a gut feeling. But the gut is connected to the brain via something called the vagus nerve. It's called the gut-brain axis. So often, what you feel connects back to intellectually how you see things. So all these old phrases, listen to your body, like mum and dad said, they were right. Gut feelings typically right unless there's a motivation for different reasons behind it.
Right. I know it's late over there. I kind of want to end with a couple things here. So
I'm waking up Eric now, so it's all good.
So we probably have a lot of I'm sure knowing that you're on here, a lot of coaches are listening. What would you say if coaches want to get better? What would you tell them how can they get better? In general, just from what you've seen, how would they start to get better?
By always initially exploring yourself. Always become your best case study. I kind of look at it, you can't become a teacher unless you become a pupil first. So you must always go back to being a student first. Right before you become any kind of coach, I would say initially, really going back to become your best case study. Really explore, I wonder why I've done this over life, and just start to kind of look at the man in the mirror again in a nice way. We look at coaching. There's two words that really control coaching, the idea of kind of empathy and compassion. You can't empathize and show compassion from what you can't coach. And I think that really goes back to, again, when you can really start to explore yourself and become your best case study. Like people like that, you know, when you say, look, you know, it's interesting with you and I today. What was the first question you asked me? Can you tell me your background?
Yeah.
People like stories. So if you say that, I can, do you know what? I'll give you an example of this around a player or really my experience. People relate to that. They get that because it becomes real. Anyone can talk about, you know, reference, you know, complex physics, fine, but there's no meaning to that. There's no relevance to that unless you make it a real story. So I would say initially it goes back to exploring, you know, reconnecting with yourself again. We've got too disconnected from ourselves. It's finding those quiet corners and reconnecting with ourselves and we go, you know, yeah, that's most likely why I've done this. And when you start to really understand why you've done what you've done, you can then really start to empathize why someone else has done what they've done. And that for me kind of relates back to, again, you look at, I spoke at the Open Forum a couple of the COVID year actually in 2020. That was a fun experience for different reasons. And it's all about the golf swing. And I think none of this is coaching. All it is more information, more noise, more distraction, more ego, all that kind of nonsense. Not one person's actually thought about the human and how do we reconnect with the human again and get the guys to explore. So I would say to any coach, you want to start something, just start by understanding yourself. Why do you have the beliefs you have? Why do you see the world the way you see it? Why do you think you really move the way you do? It is a really neat place to start. And just let your mind go, let it go. Let's see where, again, it goes back to some of those questions we said at the start of this discussion today. Some of my best discoveries are let's just see where it leads us. Who knows? Might be somewhere.
And that's when you listen to you enough on your website, you listen to you enough, you really get that out of you. The exploratory, I mean, how you talk about that, exploring, and so it really has made me think about a lot of stuff. But
it's interesting.
Constantly talk about that.
So I'll tell you a small story tonight. So we had parents' evening in school for my daughter's school. So we go in to the my daughter's teacher tonight. So one of her friends came back because she had swimming first. We did like a little crossover, and so we got some toys out that we thought they'd like to play, but didn't go near them. We're having some work on our house currently. They like to go and play with the builders. And that's kids. So we got these toys out thinking they're going to go and play with some trains and that kind of stuff. Not interested. They want to go and look at the bricks and the cement and what the builders are doing. That's kids. So it's having that childlike approach to life again. So when you say about being childlike, it doesn't mean being an idiot. It's about just taking the child's view. You know, what we see as dull, they see as fun. Is always. I remember my daughter's first Christmas. We bought all these presents. She was more interested in a piece of string. She thought, "Oh, great, I got this piece of string to play with."
Yeah.
And everyone's concerned about, does she have enough presents? She's happy playing with a bit of string. She's just really exploring what it is.
That's awesome. Yeah, that exploratory, that's the word you use a lot, exploratory, and it's a different mindset with things. So that's for the coach. What about what you see as amateur golfers? So if I didn't say before, people don't know you teach a lot of pros, or I shouldn't say, how would you say you classify? Because you are PGA, I guess, I don't even know what it's called. Is it certified, or is that the word they use anymore? Although you don't coach that way that much, right? You're using the 3D and you're helping other coaches. Would that be mainly what your day is like? Or are you standing on a lesson tee, going through a regular session with Mr. Sampson, who calls you, who's a 30 handicap? Or what are you typically doing?
My background is very sports science. That's my PhD in sports science kind of stuff. So that's my background. So most of my work is alongside like Hugh, Hugh Ma, you and I are very good friends, and so that would be an example. Hugh would hopefully come to me with a player says, "Mark, we have this question. Can you help us understand why?" So most of my work with, say, coaches, physiotherapists, orthopedic consultants sometimes, obviously players, would always be, okay, no one ever comes to me and says, "Mark, what do you reckon?" 99.9% would be, we have this question, can you help us understand why? Around why they do what they do within how they move in their golf swing. So when I think about my first session tomorrow, his coach has sent me a voice message actually tonight, really cool kid. really good guy around. We have these movements which we just find challenging to resolve. Can you help us understand why he does this? And again, often what they see there is in response to stuff over here. So, you know, that's, we'll look at that. And I think on Wednesday, I'm with a dear friend of mine up in Glasgow in Scotland, actually, with his players looking at why they move the way they do. So that's kind of what I do. Is a player will come, or coach will come with a very defined question. Can you help us understand why my neck's sore? Why my foot's sore? Why the club moves that way? Why is my distance off? Why do I find certain movement challenging? Whatever it might be. And that's when it leads us into some fun areas.
Well, it's what we talked a little bit about today, player and their neck, you know, having you look at it. So it's interesting because there's not many people out there for coaches to turn to get answers like that. I mean, it's a very small, there's not many Dr. Mark Bowles out there to get those answers from.
I don't think the world needs two of me, I'm sure.
You don't have a twin, do you? We do need more. You got a twin by chance? But you know, thank God we have you and can learn from you so much. So what the amateur, I mean, I guess how can would you look at that? If there's an amateur listening here, they can look at movement and think of how they can maybe get better. What advice could you maybe give them?
I think it really comes back again to the idea of that very clear intent. Okay, I think again, I apologise in advance to any amateurs listening to this who it just doesn't apply to. Obviously, this is a very generic response. Most amateurs, what they're trying to do is what creates the issue. So what they're actually trying to achieve is actually creating the problem. And that also applies to major winners as well. So very much the defence of, say, recreational occasional players. It also applies to very established players, that what they're trying to do based on their beliefs and their concepts again, invariably what create the issue. So again, a lot of again, I humbly say the best experience that I've had, recreational players is when you start to really explore. Okay, let's actually look at what the task demands. What are the requirements of the goal system? What is the environment, the task? What does it really need you to do? So when you start to explore the environmental demands, the task requirements, what the ball needs to do, how the club needs to move, and then how does the human interact to move the club that way, they almost go, yeah, okay. So based on that, we kind of need to do this. Well, yeah. But unfortunately, most golf coaching is inverted. They get someone moving differently, independent of the environment and the demands of the task. They try and fit the movement for the task. No. The movement should always adapt to and almost evolve to the task. So often you can change the movement, it doesn't fit with the task demands. You start to explore what the task requires, the movement almost always adapts. So I think when you can start to really understand that, what is it exactly that needs to happen? How can you hold, how can you move? It goes back to you said how you hold, how you stand is still so valuable. How can you interact with a club to allow that task to happen that way? Almost everybody moves and stands differently.
Yeah, that's it. I always felt like golf is this crazy, weird sport that, you know, you shouldn't be allowed to probably grab a club and go play before getting a little talk to about what it is. I mean, because I've watched people, I feel like this is one of the best privileges I've ever had, is to watch a new golfer on the range pick up a club and they'll swing it with pretty good swing, right? For 3, 4, 5 swings, the ball's just going dead right. Next thing you know, they have this awful swing going way over the top to fix that ball going right over there. So if they kind of understood it, and then, you know, the whole thing of just trying to pick the ball. So I feel like just that concept of just understanding these things just immediately. Yeah.
So you look at within science, it's called mechanistic thinking. So you go back to say within science now, it's called a mechanistic approach to thinking. If you understand the mechanisms, you understand why things do what they do. It's like saying, you know, how do you gain strength? You understand the basis of strength, what needs to happen from a physiological adaptation, which is what we look at in the gym. A lot of my work is with conditioning coaches, you know, strength trainers, for example. You look at, okay, what's the adaptation you're trying to produce? Therefore, how do we create the adaptation? Based on, again, whatever the question is. So when you look at that approach, as far as recreational players, if you understand the mechanism as to what's happening, you're kind of, the answer just kind of appears again. A lot of guys will go over the solution again without understanding why. And one of my real dear friends, he would be a good guy for your podcast, a guy called Graham Walker, another English guy. Graham and I have been friends for a long time. He's one of my favourite humans on the planet. I mean, not just about that. I mean, Graham developed Tommy Fleetwood, Danny Willett, I could list you a name of players, but Graham was a very private guy. Graham teaches golf from the hole backwards. So again, you'll understand what the tee shot requires once you understand where you need to putt from. So you'll go the hole out, chip, approach play, tee shot. Most guys on the driver just hit driver without really understanding why the ball needs to do that. Another approach, unless you understand what the environment does, unless you understand environmental demands and how do you know what the club needs to do. I'll give an example. Augusta's approaching soon. So we've got the 10th and the 18th. 10th obviously goes this way, 18th go that way. When you understand what the hole requires, then you understand the idea of perception action couples. But what actions do you need? Well, I need to do that and that. So therefore, you adapt the way you move based on what the environment demands. If you fit the same movement to both of those holes, you'll probably miss both fairways. Or you'll probably go left bunker on 18 maybe and run out of fairway on the 10th because you kind of just go straight. You see it that way. So again, unless you understand what the environment demands, humans through design are environmentalists. Everything we do in life is how we interact with our environment. And again, we've been disconnected from that. We've become, hence my study about light, I was saying to you earlier on about the lights we train under. As we disrupt the environment now with these overstimulating artificial blue lights, especially late in the evening, and it goes against our physiological rhythms in our body, we start to perform and behave differently. So the more we reconnect with nature again, or understand the environment, then people move differently.
Awesome. Dr. Bull, once again, you inspire me to learn more. You're awesome. I've learned a lot today too, and I know everybody here listening. So once again, what's your website, just to remind people and how they can find your stuff and get a hold of you? How would they do that?
So it's my last name, BULL, the number 3 letter D, academy.com. So ball3dacademy.com. Awesome.
Mark, thank you so much for coming on here. I really appreciate your time.
You are most welcome, Eric. And if you ever get bored and want to do like version 2, version 3, then I'm happy to talk with you whenever. It's been an absolute privilege. So thank you, and always happy to help.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.